Welcome to the Mental Breakdown. I'm Dr. Berney Wilkinson. What do we do when our kids have an interest or want to do things that's outside of our comfort zone? How do we handle it when our kids have a drive for something that just makes us feel a little uncomfortable? Well, that's the topic of today's podcast. But first, a couple of announcements. The Handbook for Raising an Emotionally Healthy Child, Part 1, Behavior Management, and the Elimination Diet Manual are both available on Amazon Kindle for download. Both are great books for helping you better understand and learn ways to manage your child's behavior. On one hand, the Handbook for Raising an Emotionally Healthy Child will help you understand typical child development from birth through adolescence, what behaviors are typical, what behaviors are to be expected, and more importantly, maybe how you can manage those behaviors in a way that doesn't afford them the opportunity to become a problem. The Elimination Diet Manual helps you look at some of our lifestyle choices, especially what we eat, and how those dietary choices may be influencing your physical, emotional, and mental health, and what you can take out of your diet that may maximize your health and really let your body function the way that it wants and needs to function. The Parenting Your ADHD course is available on paydiallc.com. 20 lectures that help you understand what ADHD is, what it's not, and how we typically treat it, including there's lectures on medications, and there's lectures specifically on various strategies that you can use and implement today at home to help start moving in the direction of improvement and stability and some calm in the home. Which is something that all of us with kids with ADHD often want. So that Parenting Your ADHD Child course is available there. The links to all of these things are in the show notes. And if you sign up and purchase the Parenting Your ADHD Child course in the month of August 2016, you can get 50% off with a code that's available and noted there in the show notes. So check that out and go ahead and get the course now while it's on sale, I guess, and use it, because what happens is when you buy it now, you get all of the courses and lectures that are already there, as well as any lectures that we add in the future. So it's a great tool, and that will continue to grow over time. So check that out on paydiallc.com. All right, I think that's all of the announcements. Let's get to the podcast and talk a little bit about how to handle situations where our kids' interests are outside of our comfort zone as parents. So, enjoy. Welcome to the Mental Breakdown. In the last podcast, I talked a little bit about how we handle situations where we want to and need to find new goals or find something that we can become passionate about. And we talked a little bit about how it's important to push our comfort zones sometimes to the max, but just push them at least a little bit so that we can experience and try things out that we've never tried before and sort of venture into areas that we've never explored before. Now, the problem, though, is that there are many times when our kids, children or teenagers, find an interest, find something that they want to do, but as they talk to us about it or as we learn more about it, we begin to realize that it's something that kind of pushes our comfort zone to the max and sometimes pushes our comfort zone too far, resulting in problems. And now I'll give a quick example. I was once working with this older child. He was about 12 years old, and he wanted to become a soccer referee. And he has friends that played soccer and he has friends who were soccer referees, and he saw that this was a way that he could earn a little bit of money, and he could be out on the soccer field every weekend and get to be in charge and get to have this nice uniform and all this kind of stuff. And he thought it was really cool. Even though he had never played soccer before, he had never been out there before, he thought that this would be a great thing. He had understood soccer from PE at school and things, so he understood it well enough to where he thinks he could manage it. And he talked to his parents, and sure enough, his parents allowed him to take the course, and he became a referee. The first day of his new job. His mom was taking him out to the fields, his home fields, where he was going to be the referee. And as they were pulling up, the mom noticed that there were some families walking up into the park with a dog on a leash. Well, little did we know, because I didn't know until that point, that the mother is deathly afraid of dogs. She had some trauma in the past that made her extremely fearful of dogs. And of course, the family had never owned a dog. The kid, the 12-year-old, he was just fine with dogs. He didn't have any problems. He would go over to a friend's house, and I guess mom didn't know, but he would go over to friends' houses who had dogs, and he interacted with the dogs just fine. So he didn't have any problems with dogs, but mom did. And so when mom saw this and realized that the park, that the dogs had to be on leashes, the park did allow dogs or parents and families to bring dogs with them into the park. The mom drew the line and said, no, there's no way. You're not doing this. And ended up not even parking, ended up just leaving. And he went back home with his referee uniform on, very upset, very sad. And it led to a lot of problems. And as you would imagine, arguments and fights and stuff at the home, because he had put in a lot of work to pass the course and to take the course. And the parents, of course, had spent money for him to get the training. And here, because the park allows dogs, mom's anxiety just would not allow him to be able to do this thing that he was very interested in. So there was a bit of a very unique and specific type of situation, because it's her fear, like a phobia, that really fueled this decision. It's a great example of where the parent's issue is limiting the child's opportunity to try something that he or she may be really interested in. And it's something that we need to talk about, because whether it's the fear of dogs, or it's the fear that your child is going to get injured if he plays a sport, and so there's no way that he's going to play a sport because he's not going to come home injured, or because if your child wants to do something after school, but the parent won't allow them because there's just no way I'm going to allow my child to stay at school after hours when most of the other people have left, because who knows what's going to happen. Or you're the type of parent who, you have a 10, 11, 12-year-old child, and you're at the store and you will not allow him to leave your side because, well, something could happen. He could wander off. He could be kidnapped, or something devastating could happen to him. When we have these types of tendencies, when we parent in this way, what we're doing is we're allowing and creating fear and stress and discomfort in our child based upon our own issues. We are allowing our problems to influence our child's opportunities, and that can be a problem. That can be an issue, and it can lead to depression. It can lead to anger. It can lead to resentment from our children, and it certainly can lead to problems in the parent-child relationship. And so, again, we're going to talk about that today, because remember, as parents, it's our responsibility, our job, to raise happy, healthy, and self-sufficient children. And I mentioned this before, just as specifically as I will now, that I didn't use the word successful. I didn't say that our job as parents is to raise successful children, because your definition of success and my definition of success are very different. And more importantly, your definition of success and your child's definition of success may be very different. So to impose your definition of success on your child limits your child's opportunities and restricts his or her potential to explore and to find things that may really drive him or her. So we have to be careful that our focus isn't to raise successful children. Our goal is to raise happy, healthy, and self-sufficient children, because it's through those three aspects that our children will find success, their own success. So let's talk a little bit about what parents can do to address this and to deal with their own issues so that it doesn't limit their child's opportunities. The first thing, as is always the first thing, we have to recognize what we're doing. When we stifle or restrict our children's opportunities, we run the risk of teaching one of two lessons. We're either going to teach them that the world is a dangerous place and that they are unsafe and that they have to stay close and stay secure, because if they venture outside of this in any way, they're going to be in danger, and they're going to be harmed or otherwise in trouble or have problems. I've met families and children who grow up in homes where that kind of fear is very very well and almost deliberately communicated, that you're not safe. So when we teach our kids that, you can imagine, I would think, that that's going to elicit and foster anxiety and stress, and that uncertainty and instability that comes with the feeling that I'm not safe. Unless I'm in an area that I'm very, very familiar with, I'm not safe. Things can go bad, and I could be hurt or in trouble or in danger in some way. So we run the risk of either teaching that, or we run the risk of inadvertently just basically teaching them that, change is bad. You don't want to change, because if you change, then you're not you. You're not the same. You're different, and different is bad. And so we run the risk of either teaching them that they're in danger all the time, or we run the risk of teaching them that we don't want to change, that same is good. And while that's true in some ways and in some circumstances, we certainly don't want to think of that universally, that we never want to progress. We never want to learn new things or do new things, because, well, if we never do new things, then we are just stuck in the rut that, again, can lead to depression and anxiety and stress and resentment and frustration and all those negative feelings that we feel sometimes in those kinds of scenarios. The second thing that parents do, once you recognize that, okay, maybe I'm teaching the wrong lesson, maybe I need to be a little bit more lenient here, but like with the mom in that situation with the soccer referee, mom's anxiety, mom's stress is founded. It's pretty significant. It's pretty real. Her anxiety, probably at that point at least, would not allow her to go into that park, because her PTSD-like symptoms would not allow her, really restrict her from being able to be exposed to that kind of stuff. So once she recognizes that, the thing that she needs to do is ask for help. Certainly, she may have a spouse, or you may have a friend or another relative or someone else who is okay in that type of situation that can take your child there. Again, the key part to that is, of course, the mother recognizing, or the parent recognizing, that it's my issue. It's not my child's issue. It's my issue that I'm dealing with, because I'm afraid and I'm fearful of it. I don't want to push that on my child or limit my child's opportunities. So I can't be there, but I want to make sure that he is able to explore this. And so I'm going to do what I can or get the help that I need to make sure he can be there. So I'll get his father or his aunt and uncle or his grandparent or a friend or somebody else that maybe referees or something. Allow them to get him to the park. Allow them to help in that situation so that he can experience that. So, that getting help is really important, especially when we can't physically do it ourselves. Another thing that we can do is we need to educate ourselves. Sometimes our concerns are not really based on fact or on reality. Many times our information, the information that we receive and use to make decisions, and that sort of fuels and creates some of our stress and concern about things, oftentimes that comes from invalid sources, or at least restricted sources. If you watch the news, you may be left with the impression that if you go outside in the evening in Miami, that you're going to get the Zika virus. Well, no, you're not, probably. The likelihood is still very small. But if you aren't careful and mindful of the sources of information that you're getting, you may be left with the impression that there's more danger than there really is. And so you want to make sure that you educate yourself from valid sources, So that may mean, going to the CDC or the Centers for Disease Control website and reading what the prevalence is, or reading what the actual situation is, to educate yourself to really know, okay, now I know that this is safe and this may not be safe. The mother, again, going back to the example with the soccer ref, that mother could certainly look at the statistics and see how many situations there have been in the past where a dog got off a leash and bit somebody or attacked someone in that particular park, or could ask and find out what type of resources there are to ensure that people leave their dogs on leashes so that they don't get away and have the opportunity to get to other people. So she could educate herself in a way to know what the real danger or real risk is. That wouldn't necessarily always relieve all of our anxiety, but it may certainly alleviate our anxiety enough to let us do the last thing, which is to let somebody else, sort of fill in for us to get our kids to where they want to be and into the situations or opportunities that they want to be in. So educating yourself, of course, you can never go wrong when you're educating yourself, as long as you're educating yourself from the right sources. You don't want to, you want to be careful where you're reading information from, because there's all kinds of stuff. I don't need to tell you that. That there's all kinds of stuff on the internet, some of which is very strange, not true in any way whatsoever. And that goes for movies as well. There's when you watch a movie, sometimes you have this impression that, man, these dangers are so significant. There was the movie Concussion not too long ago, and while the movie was really good, I really enjoyed the movie. It was absolutely dramatized. There are certainly things from that movie that were somewhat exaggerated for dramatic effect, and it's Hollywood, and it's teaching or presenting at least one person's perspective of some of these things. But the research on concussions and what is coming out really isn't as absolute as we may think. I've read some articles that say, absolutely, if there's a bad concussion, the kid shouldn't go back to school for a week or two, or at least until the symptoms are alleviated, and certainly not going back to a sport for some period of time. I've read other articles that said, as soon as the headache's gone, you should be getting back to school, because the longer you're away, the harder it is for your brain to get back into it, back into an academic-like setting. So the research does go back and forth, and really what that means is that these decisions are individually based. And so what may be dangerous for one person may not be as dangerous for somebody else. Now, that's not to minimize the effects of a concussion, because of course a concussion is a concerning and dangerous issue. But should we necessarily look at some areas of research or some information about it and make a decision as a whole about any particular person? Well, probably not. We probably should get a little bit more information before we make some of those decisions. And again, before we are in a situation where we're limiting opportunities for our child or for someone based upon this aggregate data that's out there. Now, I'm in the process of trying to, speaking of concussions, I'm in the process of trying to get get somebody on the show or on the podcast that's going to explain concussions in a little bit more detail, because this is a major limiting factor for a lot of parents. A lot of parents aren't allowing their kids to get involved in some activities, some sports and things, because of this fear of anxiety of concussions. And so we really want to touch on that a lot, so that we can, educate and alleviate some of those worries, or in the very least, educate you well enough so that you know that your decision is appropriate. Now, the last thing we can do to really help in a situation where our kids want to do things that kind of push our comfort is get professional advice. I was just talking about, trying to get a person on the podcast to talk a little bit about concussions. When we can talk to an expert about a particular concern or issue, and we can get their input or their impression or their recommendation, oftentimes that really alleviates some of the stress and concerns that we have. If you have somebody that you talk to, if you go to see a neurologist, for example, and the neurologist says, you know what, it's fine. Just make sure that he does this, and this, and it should significantly reduce the risk of a concussion or any recurring issues from a concussion, and he should be just fine. Well, that is certainly going to make you feel much better than just surfing the internet and reading different sources. You're talking to an expert who is talking with you directly, answering your questions about what's going on. And there's really not much that can replace the importance and impact of that kind of information. So getting advice from an expert is wonderful. It would be a great way to help alleviate some of those stressors so that you can see if you should push your boundaries or allow your boundaries to be pulled just a little bit so that your child can experience some things that he or she wants to experience and to see where their passion and interests lie. The bottom line with all of this, though, is this. We can't allow our issues to become our child's issues. Many times we talk about heredity and we talk about genetics as it relates to mental health conditions and anxiety and depression and all of these things. The reality is that the challenge with determining some of that is because when you grow up in an anxious home, when you grow up in a home where your parents are very anxious and their issues end up being handed down to the children, well, are these learned behaviors or are these genetic behaviors? Well, it's difficult, and twin studies help us with that a little bit. But the bottom line is that we can't allow. We have to make sure that we don't allow our issues to influence our children, especially when our issues are just our issues. They're not necessarily life-altering issues. The mother with the dog, again. There are millions of people with pet dogs and that never get bit, that never have an attack or anything like that. And so we certainly don't want the mom's fear of dogs to be handed down to the child, and so now the child is deathly afraid of dogs, but for no founded reason. He's never seen a dog attack. He's never been attacked by a dog, but yet he's terrified of dogs. That's an injustice that we would do to our kids. Instead, we want to teach them, again, to be resilient. We want them to teach them to be confident and secure in themselves and, again, self-sufficient so that they can see an interest, they can see something that they want to accomplish, and then they have the opportunity to pursue it and to explore it and to see if it's something that can take hold, that they can incorporate into their life. I think that's a big challenge for a lot of parents. It's a big problem that a lot of parents have, where they project their feelings onto their kids, and then their kids begin to have those same feelings, not for a founded reason. They just do. They just experience it because they're taught that that's what you need to experience. So we have to be very cautious of that as parents. We need to make sure that we allow our kids to experience things that they may not otherwise have an opportunity to experience. So, all right, give it a try. Push those boundaries just a little bit. Let your kids go just a little bit. See where their interests lie. See what they want to do and where they find themselves, and see what happens from there. 9 times out of 10, everything works out just fine. All right? Until next time, I'm Dr. Berney. Stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.